My entire family surrounded me at Christmas dinner. Father, mother, brother, all of them demand I sign a document giving my $2.8 million inheritance to my brother, because men are the rightful heirs. 35 guests watched as my father shoved papers in my face. My mother begged me to stop being difficult, and my brother sneered that I didn't deserve what a real man should have. When I refused, my father grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. That's when my boss, Jose Pacheco, walked through the kitchen door, and the look on my father's face told me he knew exactly how badly he'd just screwed up. My name is Lou Pemberton. I'm 32 years old, and my family had no idea who I really was. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. This is the story of how one Christmas dinner destroyed my family's reputation and finally set me free. 4 weeks before that Christmas confrontation, I sat at my parents' Thanksgiving table and watched my family treat me like I was invisible. I had arrived 20 minutes late because a client's estate case had an emergency filing deadline. I texted my mother twice to explain, but when I walked into the dining room, she just sighed heavily. "Dyla, you're always late," she said, not looking up from arranging the turkey platter. "Can't you just work a normal job?" I opened my mouth to explain. I'd just $4.5 million estate case that morning, preventing a family from losing their grandfather's legacy to predatory creditors. But my brother Nick June cut me off with a laugh. "Still playing secretary at that little law office?" He grinned at the assembled relatives, who chuckled politely. "When are you going to get a real career, Salwa?" I sat down in my assigned seat at the far end of the table, away from where my father held court at the head. Dad didn't even glance at me. He was too busy asking Kevin about his latest real estate deal. "Tell us about the Brookline development, son," Dad said, leaning forward with genuine interest. "I heard you closed $12 million? 15, actually," Nick June said, chest puffing out. "Signed the contracts last Tuesday. It's going to be huge for Pemberton Properties." The family murmured appreciation. My mother beamed. My aunt raised her wine glass in a toast. I stayed quiet. I'd learned years ago that defending myself only made it worse. They'd smile and nod, then change the subject as if I hadn't spoken. At that table, I was still just Lou, who never achieved anything, no matter what I actually accomplished. But sitting there, picking at my untouched plate, I felt something shift inside me. A quiet voice whispered, "How much longer can you live like this?" The truth was, my life in Manhattan couldn't have been more different from what my family believed. Monday through Friday, I worked on the 42nd floor of a glass tower overlooking Central Park. My office wasn't large. Junior attorneys never got the corner suites, but it had a window, and on clear mornings, I could see all the way to the George Washington Bridge. Pacheco and Associates specialized in high net worth estate planning. Our clients were the kind of people who owned multiple properties, held complex investment portfolios, and needed someone who understood both tax law and family dynamics. In 8 years, I'd won 47 cases and generated over $3.2 million in revenue for the firm. Last month, Jose Pacheco himself had called me into his office. "Lou," he'd said, gesturing to the chair across from his mahogany desk, "I want to talk about your future here." I'd sat down carefully, trying not to hope. "You're being considered for junior partner," he continued. "The board will make the final decision in March, but between you and me, I've already submitted my recommendation. You've earned this." I should have been ecstatic, Being a junior partner at Pacheco and Associates was something only 2% of associates achieved. It meant equity in the firm, a voice in major decisions, and a salary that would jump from $180,000 to $250,000 plus profit sharing. But I hadn't told my family. Every time I went home to Boston, I listened to Kevin brag about his 10 condo sales or his lunch with a state senator. I watched my father's eyes light up with pride, and I kept my mouth shut because I'd learned a hard lesson. They wouldn't believe me anyway. "Lou, why do you hide your light?" Pacheco had asked me once. "Your family should know who you really are." I'd smiled and changed the subject. It was easier to stay quiet than to fight for recognition I'd never get. There was one person who saw me clearly. My grandfather, Max Pemberton. Grandpa Max had been a trial attorney back when law firms were all male clubs, and a good closing argument could change a jury in 15 minutes. He graduated from Harvard Law in 1958 and practiced for 40 years before retiring to his Cape Cod house with an ocean view and the library that smelled like old leather and pipe tobacco. He was the reason I'd gone to law school in the first place. "Salwa," he told me when I was 12, "you've got something your father never had. You listen before you speak. That's what makes a great lawyer. For the past 3 years, ever since his heart started failing and his doctor ordered him to stop living alone, I've driven to Cape Cod every weekend. Sometimes I stayed overnight in the guest room. We'd sit on his back deck, watching the waves, and he'd tell me stories about cases he'd won or lost. I'd tell him about mine. He never once questioned whether I was good enough. My father visited maybe 3 times a year, always for less than an hour. Kevin came even less frequently. In September 2024, Grandpa called me with an unusual request. "Salwa, honey, I need a good estate attorney," he said. "Someone I can trust to draft something airtight. Do you know anyone?" I'd paused, surprised. "Grandpa, you already have a will. James Hartford did it years ago." "I need a new one," he said firmly. "And I don't want James anywhere near it. Can you recommend someone outside the family circle?" I thought immediately of Jose Pacheco. He and Grandpa had both gone to Harvard Law just 15 years apart. When I mentioned Pacheco's name, Grandpa actually chuckled. "Jose Pacheco? I remember him from alumni events. A decent man, ethical. Set up a meeting, will you?" 3 days later, I sat in Pacheco's office while he and Grandpa discussed the new will in detail. I wasn't privy to the contents due to attorney-client privilege, but as we left, Grandpa squeezed my hand. "They don't see you, Salwa," he said quietly. "But I do, and soon everyone else will too." I didn't understand what he meant, not then. Grandpa Max died on November 18th of a heart attack in his bed overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. I was with him. I drove up Friday night after work because his hospice nurse called to say he was fading. I held his hand through the night, reading him passages from his favorite Steinbeck novels until his breathing slowed and finally stopped at dawn. My family arrived 3 hours later. Dad walked in first, took one look at Grandpa's peaceful face, and immediately started making phone calls about funeral arrangements. Nick June hovered awkwardly by the door, checking his phone. My mother cried quietly, but she didn't stay long. She had a charity luncheon at noon. The funeral was held on November 22nd at Old North Church in Boston. 200 people attended. Grandpa had been respected in legal circles, beloved by neighbors, and generous with local charities. My father delivered a eulogy that made several people cry. My father was the greatest man I've ever known, he said, voice breaking beautifully. He taught me everything about integrity, family, and legacy. I'll carry his wisdom with me forever. I stood in the back listening to him talk about a man he'd barely visited and felt something harden in my chest. After the service, while everyone else worked over coffee and finger sandwiches, James Hartford, my father's attorney and old family friend, pulled me aside. "Lou, could you stay for a few minutes? There's something we need to discuss regarding your grandfather's estate." "Of course," I said. Hartford's expression was odd, not sad exactly, more like uncomfortable. "The will reading is scheduled for Wednesday at my office," he said. "Your grandfather left some specific instructions. I think your family is going to be surprised." I felt a chill run down my spine. What kind of instructions? Hartford just shook his head. "Wednesday at 10 a.m., don't be late." On Wednesday, November 25th, my entire family gathered in James Hartford's wood-paneled office in downtown Boston. The room smelled like old books and furniture polish. Hartford sat behind his desk with a manila folder in front of him. My father took the chair directly across from him, naturally assuming the position of authority. My mother sat beside him, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Kevin sprawled in his chair, looking bored. I took the seat farthest from everyone else. Hartford cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. Max's will is quite clear and was properly witnessed by two attorneys, including Jose Pacheco from Pacheco and Associates in New York. Before we begin, I want to emphasize that this document is legally binding and reflects Harold's explicit wishes." My father nodded impatiently. "Of course. Let's get on with it." Hartford opened the folder and began reading. Most of it was standard small charitable donations and personal effects distributed among friends. Then he reached the major assets. "To my grandson, Nick Pemberton, Jr., I leave a trust fund in the amount of $1 million to be managed by First Boston Bank under the oversight of trustee Margaret Patterson. The trust will provide an annual distribution not to exceed $60,000, with the principal protected from creditors and poor investment decisions." Kevin sat up straighter. "A managed trust? Why can't I just have the money?" Hartford ignored him and continued. "To my granddaughter, Diana Marie Pemberton, I leave my residence at 21,105 Ocean Drive, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, including all furnishings, personal effects, and family heirlooms contained therein. The property is approximately $4.028 million. The room went silent. I sat frozen, unable to process what I just heard. Grandpa's house. The beautiful colonial with the wraparound porch and the ocean view was mine. What? My father's voice cracked like a whip. "That's ridiculous." Hartford held up a hand. "Nick, please let me finish." Max included a personal statement explaining his decision. He adjusted his reading glasses and continued in Grandpa's written words. "Lou has been the only family member who gave me her time, her love, and her genuine companionship during my final years. She visited every weekend for 3 years, sacrificing her own comfort to ensure I wasn't alone. Kevin is a kind young man, but he needs financial structure and discipline. Lou has earned this inheritance through her devotion, and I trust she will honor the family legacy better than anyone else could. My father's face turned purple. He stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. This is insane. Kevin is the male heir. That house should go to him. The will is ironclad, Nick, Hartford said firmly. It was witnessed by 2 attorneys. Max was of sound mind. He was 89 years old. Obviously, he wasn't thinking clearly. My mother started crying harder. Kevin looked like he'd been slapped, and I just sat there stunned, realizing that Grandpa had seen exactly what was coming and had tried to protect me from it. The month between Thanksgiving and Christmas was the longest of my life. It started with phone calls. My mother called the first 2 days after the will reading. "Honey," she said, her voice small and pleading, "your father is very upset. He hasn't slept in 2 days. Can't you just consider doing the right thing? The house should stay in the mail line. It's tradition." "Mom, Grandpa's will was clear. But Nick Jr. needs it more than you do. You have your job. You're independent. Your brother has a family to think about." I closed my eyes, fighting the familiar guilt. I am keeping what Grandpa left me. She sighed like I disappointed her. "Think about it, please, for the family." Nick Jr. texted constantly. First it was jokes. "Hey sis, want to trade? I'll give you my Pokemon card collection for a 2.8 million house, LOL. Then the jokes turned desperate. "Seriously, Salwa, I really need that money. I'm in a tight spot financially. You'd be helping me out." I didn't respond. I was beginning to understand that my brother's tight spot was probably much worse than he was admitting. The worst part was that my father didn't contact me at all. Radio silence from the man who'd raised me, as if I'd betrayed him so thoroughly that I no longer deserved acknowledgement. Instead, 2 weeks before Christmas, James Hartford showed up at my Manhattan office. "This is highly irregular," I told him as he sat down across from my desk. "I know." He looked uncomfortable. "Your father asked me to bring you this." He slid a document across my desk. The header read, "Voluntary relinquishment of inheritance rights." "He wants me to sign away the house," I said, my voice flat. "It would make everything simpler," Hartford said. "Your family could heal. Christmas wouldn't be difficult." I pushed the document back toward him. "The will is legal and binding. Tell my father I'm not signing anything." Hartford stood, gathering his papers. "Lou, I need to warn you. Your father is planning something at Christmas dinner. He's invited a large group of people. I think he's going to pressure you publicly." My stomach dropped. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've known you since you were 10 years old," he said quietly. "And what he's planning isn't right." On December 20th, a formal invitation arrived at my apartment. It was a cream-colored cardstock with embossed gold lettering. "The Pemberton Family Christmas Dinner, December 25th, 6 p.m., black tie." I stared at it for a long time. We'd never had a black tie Christmas dinner before. Usually it was just immediate family pajamas by 9 p.m., my mother's famous cinnamon rolls for breakfast the next morning. This was different. This was a performance. I called my best friend and coworker, Irma Bennett. She came over within an hour, took one look at the invitation and said, "Don't go. If I don't show up, they'll say I'm the problem." I said, "They'll tell everyone I refuse to come because I'm selfish." "Lou, they're setting you up. Your dad invited what? 30 people. He's going to use social pressure to force your hand." I know. I sank onto my couch. But if I don't face them now, this will never end. Irma squeezed my shoulder. Then promise me you won't sign anything, no matter what they say or who's watching. I won't, I said. The house is mine. Grandpa wanted me to have it. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that Jose Pacheco had received an invitation too. Grandpa Max and Pacheco had been friendly through alumni networks, and my mother had apparently decided to invite Grandpa's friends to make the evening seem more legitimate. Pacheco later told me he almost declined. He was supposed to spend Christmas with his daughter in Connecticut, but something about the timing bothered him. A will reading, followed by a large family gathering just 1 month later? His lawyer instincts sensed trouble. So he changed his plans, packed a briefcase with documents I didn't know existed, and drove to Boston. He saved my life that night. Or at least, he saved the life I'd spent 8 years building in secret. I arrived at my parents' house at 5:45 p.m. on Christmas Day, 15 minutes early, because I refused to give them ammunition about lateness. The Pemberton Mansion sat on Beacon Hill's most exclusive street, 8,000 square feet of federal-style architecture, with black shutters and gas lanterns flanking the entrance. My father had bought it 20 years ago when Pemberton Properties took off, and he treated it like a museum of his own success. Tonight, every window blazed with light. A valet service had been hired to park cars. Through the tall windows, I could see people in cocktail dresses and tuxedos milling around with champagne flutes. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a gala. My stomach knotted as I climbed the steps. I was wearing a simple black dress, elegant but understated. Nothing like the designer gowns I glimpsed through the windows. The moment I stepped inside, I understood exactly what my father had orchestrated. The foyer was packed with people I recognized. CEOs from companies that partnered with Pemberton Properties, board members from the Boston Country Club, society wives from my mother's charity circle, even a city councilman. At least 35 guests, all dressed like they were attending the symphony. This was my father's world. These were his people, the audience he performed for, the social circle that validated his status. And tonight, I was going to be the villain in his carefully staged morality play. My mother rushed over, her smile bright and brittle. "Lou, you made it. Come, let me introduce you to some people." She steered me towards a cluster of women near the Christmas tree. A 12-foot Douglas fir decorated with ornaments that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Everyone, this is my daughter Lou. She works in New York." The women smiled politely, their eyes already dismissing me as they returned to their conversation about Caribbean vacation homes. I felt like I was underwater, sound muffled, breathing difficult. This was going to be worse than I'd imagined. Dinner was served at 6:30. I found my name card at the far end of the table between an elderly woman who talked exclusively about her grandson at Yale and an empty chair. My father sat at the head of the table like a king holding court. Kevin was positioned to his right, my mother to his left. The message was clear. These were the important Pembertons. I was just there. "Nick, tell everyone about the Seaport development," my father said, his voice carrying easily across the table. Kevin launched into a story about a $15 million deal he'd closed last month. People nodded appreciatively. Someone asked intelligent follow-up questions. My brother glowed under the attention. Then, one of my father's business partners, a silver-haired man named Gerald, turned his attention to me. "And you, Lou, what is it you do?" Before I could answer, Nick Jr. cut in with a laugh. "Oh, Lou does some paperwork in New York, filing, that sort of thing." "I'm an attorney," I said quietly. "Oh, how nice," Gerald's wife said in that tone people use with children. "Are you a paralegal?" "I'm a senior associate, specializing in estate planning." But Gerald had already turned back to Kevin, asking about another deal. My correction had dissolved into the ambient noise of clinking silverware and polite conversation. I noticed then that Jose Pacheco was seated at a side table near the kitchen door, not close enough to be part of the main conversation, but close enough to hear everything. He was watching my father with an expression I couldn't quite read. Our eyes met briefly, and he gave me a small nod. I didn't understand why Pacheco was here, but I felt fractionally less alone knowing he was. Across the table, Kevin was describing his latest business trip to Miami. The penthouse had 3 balconies, he said, gesturing expansively. The client insisted on celebrating the closing there. Can you imagine? My father beamed. "That's my son. He knows how to close a deal." I stared at my untouched plate and felt invisible. At 7:30, my father stood and raised his wine glass. The table fell silent. "I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight," he said, his voice warm and practiced. "Christmas is about family, tradition, and honoring those who came before us. My father, Max Pemberton, believed deeply in family legacy. He understood that certain values must be passed down through generations." People nodded solemnly. My mother dabbed at her eyes. "Max would have wanted this family united," my father continued. "He would have wanted his legacy preserved in the way it was meant to be, through the rightful heirs following the traditions that have guided our family for generations." I felt every eye in the room shift toward me. The subtext was clear to anyone paying attention. I was the obstacle to family unity, to family, tradition, and rightful inheritance, my father said, raising his glass higher. "To family," the guest echoed, clinking glasses. I didn't raise mine. Kevin leaned forward, addressing the table at large. "You know, Grandpa Max loved tradition. He understood that some things, like family estates, should stay with the male line. It's about preserving legacy for future generations." A guest I didn't recognize nodded. "Of course, that's how families maintain their strength." My mother spoke up, her voice trembling. "Max would have wanted us all together. He wouldn't have wanted conflict." Another woman, one of my mother's society friends, turned to Kevin sympathetically. "You must be inheriting the Cape Cod house, Nick. I've heard it's absolutely beautiful." "Well," Kevin said carefully, "there's been a misunderstanding, but we're going to resolve it tonight as a family." The woman looked confused. Then her eyes found me. Understanding dawned on her face, followed by something that looked like disapproval. I set my fork down carefully. My hands were shaking. "There's no misunderstanding," I said, my voice cutting through the chatter. "The will is clear." "Lou," my mother said quickly, "let's not discuss this now." "Why not?" I met Nick Jr.'s eyes across the table. "You brought it up." The room went quiet. 35 pairs of eyes turned to me, and I felt the weight of their judgment before anyone even spoke. I need to pause here for a moment. If you've ever been in a situation where your family tried to gaslight you in front of others, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear your story. And if you're finding this relatable, please hit that like button and subscribe. Your support means everything. Now, let me tell you what happened when my father stood up and made his demand. My father stood again, this time without the warm smile. His expression was serious, almost grave. Since Lou has brought up the subject, he said, I suppose now is as good a time as any to address it. He gestured to James Hartford, who had been sitting quietly near the fireplace. Hartford stood reluctantly and approached the table carrying a leather document folder. Tonight, my father announced, we're going to correct an unfortunate mistake in my father's will. I felt my chest tighten. This was it. This was the trap. Max was 89 years old when he drafted his most recent will. My father continued, while we all loved him dearly, age affects judgment. He made a decision that goes against everything our family stands for. Hartford placed the folder on the table in front of me. I didn't touch it. The Pemberton estate has always passed to the eldest male heir, my father said, his voice taking on the tone he used in business negotiations. Calm, reasonable, utterly certain. It's been that way for 4 generations. That's not sexism. That's tradition. That's how families like ours maintain their legacy. Several guests nodded. I heard murmurs of agreement. Lou, my father said, turning his full attention to me, I know you love your brother. I know you want what's best for this family. Tonight, you're going to sign a document transferring the Cape Cod property to Kevin, where it rightfully belongs. No, I said. My voice came out steadier than I expected. We already discussed this, Dad. I'm not signing anything. Don't be difficult. His tone hardened slightly. Everyone here understands that this is the right thing to do. I looked around the table. Some people were nodding. Others looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. No one was going to defend me. The will is legally binding, I said. Grandpa was examined by physicians. He was completely lucid. He made his choice. His choice was wrong, Kevin burst out. He stood up, face flushed. Come on, Lou. Don't be selfish. I need that house. I have a wife and kids to think about. What do you have? Just a job. The words hit like a slap. Just a job. As if the career I'd built meant nothing. As if 8 years of 80-hour weeks and fought battles counted for less than his ability to exist as a male Pemberton. This isn't about need, I said. It's about respect. Grandpa respected me enough to leave me something meaningful. I'm not going to disrespect his wishes. My father's expression turned cold. You're embarrassing yourself, Lou. Everyone in this room knows what the right thing to do is. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. My mother started crying. Not dramatic sobs, just quiet tears sliding down her carefully made-up face. Lou, please, she said. Your father has worked so hard to build this family's reputation. Can't you think of him for once? Can't you think of all of us? The guilt hit hard and familiarly. I'd spent my entire life trying to make my mother happy, trying not to cause problems, trying to be the daughter who didn't make waves. I am thinking of the family, I said. Grandpa was family too. Max made a mistake, my father said flatly. He was old. He wasn't thinking clearly. An aunt, my father's sister Patricia, spoke up from the middle of the table. Lou, in our family, we respect the men. That's how we were raised. That's how civilization works. Women don't inherit the primary estates. A few people nodded. I felt my face flush with humiliation and rage. Nick Jr. tried a different approach. Look, Salwa, I'm not trying to be mean here, but let's be realistic. You're 32 and single. You have a little job in New York. I have actual responsibilities, a wife, 2 kids, and a mortgage. Dad's grooming me to take over Pemberton Properties someday. I need assets. I need that house. A little job, I repeated, my voice dangerous now. But Kevin was on a roll. I'm not saying it's not nice that you have a career, but come on. You're doing paperwork. I'm running million-dollar deals. There's a difference. Someone at the table, I didn't see who, murmured, agreement. My father leaned forward, his hands flat on the table. Everyone here knows what the right thing to do is, Lou. Don't embarrass yourself further. Sign the document. Let's move past this unpleasantness and enjoy Christmas as a family. The pressure was suffocating. 35 people watching me, most of them agreeing with my father, waiting for me to fold like I'd always folded before. But I thought about Grandpa's hand squeezing mine. They don't see you, but I do. No, I said, I'm not signing. I'm not. My father's face changed. The reasonable businessman mask slipped, revealing something uglier underneath. He walked around the table toward me. I stood up instinctively, my chair scraping backward. You will sign this, he said, his voice low and threatening. Right now. No, Dad, I won't. Do you want to ruin this family's reputation? He shoved the document into my hands. Do you want everyone here to know what a selfish, ungrateful daughter you are? Sign it. Dad, please. You've always been difficult, he hissed. Always had to make everything about you, but not tonight. Tonight, you're going to do as you're told. I tried to hand the document back. I can't. It's not right. His hand shot out and grabbed my upper arm. His fingers dug in hard enough that I felt my skin pinch beneath his grip. His nails cut into my flesh. Dad, you're hurting me. Sign the paper. I tried to pull away, but he held on tighter. I heard my mother gasp. I heard several guests make sounds of shock, but no one moved to help me. Lou, he growled, his face inches from mine. You will do as I say. I looked into his eyes and saw a stranger. This wasn't the father who taught me to ride a bike or bought me ice cream after soccer games. This was a man who cared more about control and tradition than his own daughter's autonomy. Let go of me, I said, my voice shaking. Not until you sign. Nick, my mother cried. Nick, please. But he didn't let go. His grip tightened until I felt tears spring to my eyes. Not from sadness, but from actual physical pain. The room had gone completely silent. 35 people watched my father physically coerce me into giving up my inheritance, and not one of them was stepping in to stop him. I felt something break inside me. Not my will, that stayed intact, but the illusion that my family loved me more than they loved their outdated ideas about gender and inheritance. Nick, the voice came from the kitchen doorway, calm and authoritative. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Everyone's head swiveled toward the sound. Jose Pacheco stood there in a charcoal suit, briefcase in hand, his expression colder than I'd ever seen it. My father's grip on my arm loosened slightly. Who the hell are you? Pacheco walked into the dining room with the confidence of someone who'd spent 30 years in courtrooms. Jose Pacheco, Pacheco and Associates. I was Max Pemberton's attorney, and I witnessed the execution of his will. He set his briefcase down on the side table with a deliberate thunk. This is a private family matter, my father said, his voice tight. It stopped being private the moment you turned it into a public spectacle, Pacheco replied. He looked at my father's hand, still gripping my arm. You're currently committing assault and coercion in front of 36 witnesses. I'd suggest you let your daughter go before you make this situation significantly worse for yourself. I'm her father. I'm trying to help her see reason by bruising her. Nick, look at your hand. My father glanced down and seemed to realize how hard he was gripping me. He released me abruptly. I stumbled back, cradling my arm. Already, I could see the marks his fingers had left, red welts that would darken into bruises by morning. Pacheco moved to stand between my father and me. Miss Pemberton, are you all right? Yes, I think so. Do you want to press charges for assault? The question hung in the air. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. My mother let out a small sob. I just want them to respect the will, I said quietly. Pacheco nodded, then turned back to my father. Max came to see me 3 months before he passed away. He knew you'd try something like this, Nick. He told me explicitly that he expected you to pressure Lou into relinquishing her inheritance. That will is invalid. My father snapped. My father wasn't in his right mind. Actually, Pacheco said, opening his briefcase, I have documentation that will make you very uncomfortable if you continue down this path. Would you like me to share it with your guests? My father's face had gone pale. What documentation? Pacheco didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gently examined the marks on my arm, his expression darkening as he noted the depth of the bruising already forming. Min Claire, he said formally, you have grounds for assault charges, multiple witnesses, and physical evidence. The question is whether you want to pursue them. I was shaking now, adrenaline flooding my system. I just want this to stop. Pacheco nodded, then turned his attention back to my father. Max Pemberton was examined by 2 independent physicians in September 2024. Dr. Patricia Evans and Dr. Michael Chen both certified that he possessed full cognitive capacity. His mini mental state examination score was 29 out of 30, well above the threshold for a sound mind. Hartford had gone very quiet in his corner. He knew what was coming. Furthermore, Pacheco continued, Max anticipated exactly this scenario. He anticipated that you would claim he was senile, that you would pressure Lou, and that you would attempt to manipulate the situation using social pressure and family obligation. You don't know what you're talking about, my father said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Don't I? Pacheco pulled a folder from his briefcase. I have the original will notarized and witnessed. I have the medical evaluations. I have documentation of every visit Diana made to Max's home over the past 3 years. Weekly, sometimes twice weekly, for hours at a time. In contrast, I have evidence that you visited your father exactly 6 times in the past 2 years, Nick. 6 times in 24 months. Several guests exchanged glances. This wasn't looking good for my father's carefully crafted image. And that's not even the most damaging evidence I have, Pacheco said quietly. But I'm willing to keep it private for now, if you accept the will as written and leave Lou alone. Hartford finally spoke up, his voice thin. Nick, I strongly suggest you take his offer. Any attempt to contest this would be inadvisable. My father looked around the room at his guests, his business partners, and his social circle. They were all watching him now with varying degrees of skepticism and disapproval. He'd lost control of his own performance. You're bluffing, my father said, but I heard the uncertainty in his voice. Am I? Pacheco opened the folder and laid the first document on the table for everyone to see. This is Max's will, executed on September 15th, 2024, and notarized by Sarah Whitfield of Commonwealth Notary Services. 2 witnesses, Attorney Patricia Dunn from Dunn and Associates, and I. No family members were present, eliminating any question of undue influence. He placed a second document beside the first. This is the cognitive assessment from Dr. Patricia Evans, dated September 10th, 2024. Her conclusion? The patient demonstrates full cognitive capacity, intact memory, clear reasoning ability, and no signs of dementia or diminished mental function. She scored him 29 out of 30 on the MMS. Most healthy adults don't score that high. Kevin leaned forward. Okay, but that doesn't prove anything. Lou could have manipulated him emotionally. Interesting theory, Pacheco said. Let's examine it. Lou, how many times did you visit your grandfather in the last 3 years of his life? Every weekend, I said quietly. Sometimes I'd stay overnight. Pacheco pulled out a small notebook. I have Max's calendar logs. He meticulously recorded every visitor. In the 3 years between November 2021 and November 2024, Lou visited 148 times. Nick Sr., you visited 6 times. Nick Jr., you visited 4 times, and 3 of those were holidays when you stopped by for less than an hour. The silence was deafening. So when you talk about manipulation, Pacheco said, you're suggesting that the person who actually showed up, who sat with Max through doctor's appointments and late-night fears and lonely Sunday afternoons, that person manipulated him? While the family members who couldn't be bothered to visit somehow had his best interests at heart. A woman near the end of the table, one of my mother's society friends, whispered to her companion. The whisper carried. I had no idea she was the one taking care of him. That's enough, my father said. We don't need to air family business. You made it public business when you invited 35 people to witness your coercion, Pacheco interrupted. But if you insist, we can stop right now. Accept the will as written, apologize to your daughter, and we can all go home. My father's jaw clenched. I won't let my father's estate be stolen. Then I suppose I have no choice. Pacheco pulled out a small recording device. Max anticipated you wouldn't accept the documentation, so he recorded a video statement on August 20th, 2024, with me present as a witness. He wanted to make his intentions absolutely clear. My mother made a small sound of distress. Nick, maybe we should play it, my father said coldly. Pacheco pressed play. Grandpa's voice filled the room, strong, clear, unmistakably lucid. My name is Max James Pemberton. I'm 89 years old, of sound mind and body, though my heart isn't what it used to be. I'm making this recording to clarify my testament wishes in case my son Nick attempts to override them. Several guests looked shocked. This wasn't the rambling of a confused old man. Nick, if you're hearing this, it means you've done exactly what I feared. You've tried to bully Lou into giving up what I left her. Let me be perfectly clear. I left her the Cape Cod house because she earned it. Not with money, not with empty promises, with time, with presence, with love. My eyes burned with tears. Nick Jr. is a good boy, but he's financially irresponsible. I've left him a trust fund to be managed by professionals because I know he'll squander anything he can access freely. Lou has shown herself to be responsible, ethical, and devoted. The house goes to her because I trust her with my legacy more than I trust anyone else. The recording paused for a moment. Then Grandpa continued, his voice harder. Nick, you haven't visited me more than a handful of times in 3 years. You were too busy building your empire, too busy being important. But Lou came every weekend. She read to me. She held my hand when I was frightened. She chose to be there, not because she wanted my money. She had her own successful career, but because she loved me. I wish I could tell you my father apologized right then, but we're not done yet. If you've ever had a moment where the truth finally came out and people had to face what they did, drop a fire emoji in the comments. And please, if this story is resonating with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Now, let me tell you about the reveal that changed everything. The recording ended. Grandpa's voice disappeared, leaving only silence and the sound of my mother crying. My father stood frozen, his face ashen. This doesn't change anything. Lou is nobody. She's a secretary with delusions. Nobody. Pacheco's voice cut like a blade. Nick, you really don't know your own daughter at all, do you? He turned to address the room. Let me properly introduce Diana Pemberton, since her own family seems incapable of seeing her clearly. I wanted to disappear, but Pacheco continued, steady and sure. Lou isn't a secretary. She's not a paralegal. She's a senior associate at Pacheco and Associates, one of the top 5 estate planning firms in New York. Over the past 8 years, she's won 47 cases and generated $3.22 million in revenue for our firm. I saw heads turn, expressions change from dismissal to surprise. She's currently being considered for junior partner, an honor achieved by less than 2% of associates. The board will make the final announcement in March, but I submitted my recommendation 3 months ago. In my 30 years of practice, I've only recommended 6 people for partnership. Lou is one of them. Gerald, the silver-haired man who'd asked about my paralegal work earlier, looked stunned. Pacheco and Associates. That firm handles the Caldwell estate, the Jenkins Trust, among others. Pacheco said Lou personally managed the restructuring of the Martinez family holdings last year, a $4.5 million estate that was headed for disaster. She saved it with strategy, dedication, and brilliant legal work. My mother turned to me, her face pale. Honey, why didn't you tell us? I looked at her, at all of them, and felt something hard and certain settle in my chest. I tried, I said quietly, but every time I mentioned my work, you called it paperwork. You called me a secretary. You asked when I'd get a real career. So I stopped trying. Pacheco wasn't finished. He turned to my brother, his expression hardening. And since we're being honest tonight, Kevin, would you like to tell everyone why you really need that $2.8 million house? My brother's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Pacheco pulled another document from his briefcase. I'm the trustee overseeing your $1 million inheritance. That means I have legal access to your financial records to ensure the trust is being managed properly. You've been very busy, Nick. Dad, Kevin started. He owes $83,000 to offshore gambling accounts, Pacheco said flatly. Online poker, sports betting, cryptocurrency gambling. He planned to sell the Cape Cod house immediately to pay off his debts before your father found out. My father's head swung toward Kevin. What? Dad, I can explain. $800,000. My father's voice rose to a roar. You've been lying to me about gambling debt? I was going to tell you. I just needed to figure it out first. Max knew,
Pacheco said. That's why he left you a managed trust instead of liquid assets. He knew you'd blow through it in a year. He was trying to protect you from yourself. Several guests were standing now, edging toward the door. A scandal was one thing. Financial recklessness and debt was something else entirely in Boston's elite circles. I'm sorry, Kevin said desperately. I'm sorry. I have a problem. I need help. But the damage was done. My father sank into his chair, his carefully constructed Christmas spectacle collapsing around him. Gerald and 2 other business partners were putting on their coats. The women from my mother's charity circle were whispering urgently to each other. The Pembertons' perfect family image was shattering in real time, and everyone was watching. Within 20 minutes, the dining room had emptied. Gerald stopped to shake my hand on his way out. Miss Pemberton, I had no idea about your credentials. Please accept my apology for the misunderstanding earlier. Thank you. I managed. A couple from my mother's charity circle paused by my father's chair. The woman's voice was cold. Nick, I think it's best if we step back from the Beacon Hill redevelopment proposal. The board will be in touch. They left before he could respond. I watched person after person make polite excuses and disappear into the snowy Boston night. Some avoided eye contact with my parents entirely. Others offered sympathetic looks directed at me, not my father. The city councilman, who'd been laughing at Nick Jr.'s stories an hour ago, slipped out the front door without saying goodbye. 2 board members from the Boston Country Club left together, their low conversation impossible to hear, but easy to interpret from their expressions. By 9 p.m., only family remained, and Pacheco, still standing near the kitchen door with his briefcase, watching everything with the calm attention of someone documenting events for future reference. My father sat at the head of the empty table, staring at nothing. My mother was crying quietly into her napkin. Nick Jr. had disappeared upstairs. The dining room, which had been so full of light and noise and champagne just hours ago, felt cavernous and cold. Sin Hartford approached me cautiously. Miss Pemberton, I want to apologize. I should never have brought that relinquishment document to your office. What your father asked me to do was unethical. Thank you, I said. My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like I was underwater. The will stands as written, Hartford continued. And if you want my advice, document those bruises. Photograph them just in case. I looked down at my arm. The marks where my father had grabbed me were already turning purple. After Hartford left, my father finally looked at me. Lou. His voice was rough, unfamiliar. I didn't know you were so successful. You never said you didn't know. I cut him off, or didn't care enough to ask. He flinched. I thought you needed guidance. I was trying to protect the family legacy by grabbing me hard enough to leave bruises. I held up my arm so he could see the damage. By humiliating me in front of 35 people. That's not protection, Dad. That's control. I never meant to hurt you. Yes, you did. My voice was steady now, clear. You meant to hurt me into submission.
You meant to make me feel small enough that I'd give up what was rightfully mine. My mother reached for me. Honey, your father is sorry. He just is he. I turned to my father. Are you sorry you did it, or are you sorry you got caught? Silence. That's what I thought. I picked up my purse. I'm leaving. Lou, please, my mother started. No, Mom. You sat there and watched him grab me. You cried about family unity while he physically forced me to sign away my inheritance. You chose him over me again. My mother's face crumpled, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Not tonight. I turned to Kevin, who'd crept back downstairs and was hovering in the doorway. And you? You were willing to let me give up $2.8 million to pay your gambling debts. You couldn't even be honest about why you needed it. I'm sorry, Salwa, he said, and at least he sounded genuine. I'm so sorry. I was desperate. I need help. You should have asked for help, I said, not tried to steal from me. I walked toward the door where Pacheco was waiting. My father called after me. What do you want from us? I turned back. I want you to respect me, and until you can do that, I want you to leave me alone. Pacheco drove me back to Manhattan. I sat in the passenger seat of his Mercedes, watching Boston's lights fade behind us, my body shaking with delayed shock. Are you okay? He asked after 15 minutes of silence. I don't know. I looked down at my hands, which were trembling. I just watched my entire family implode on Christmas. You watched them reveal who they've always been? Pacheco corrected gently. You just finally saw it clearly. Did you know? I asked. When Grandpa came to you in September, did you know he was protecting me from this? Pacheco was quiet for a moment. Max told me he expected your father to challenge the will. He said Nick had never been able to see past tradition to see his own daughter. He asked me to look after you if things got difficult. Why didn't you tell me? He wanted you to stand up for yourself first, Pacheco said. He told me Salwa needs to know her own strength before anyone can help her, but make sure you're there when she needs backup. My eyes burned. I didn't feel strong tonight, but you were. You said no. You held your ground even when your entire family and 35 guests were pressuring you. Do you know how rare that is? We drove in silence for another mile. Finally, Pacheco spoke again. When we get back to the city, take a few days off. I'll handle the Carmichael estate closing. You need time to process this. What about work? The partnership decision? Pacheco glanced at me. Lou, the partnership is yours. That's not up for debate. You've earned it 100 times over, but right now, you need to take care of yourself. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. My therapist specializes in family trauma. Call her. I took the card, my throat tight. Thank you for everything. You don't need to thank me for treating you with basic decency. Pacheco said that should be the minimum. 3 days later, James Hartford called my cell phone. Miss Pemberton, I wanted to follow up regarding the events of Christmas evening. May I speak candidly? Of course. I've been practicing law for 30 years, he said. I've never witnessed anything like what your father did. I'm calling to formally apologize for my role in it. I should never have brought that relinquishment document to your office. Thank you for saying that. I also want to confirm that Max's will is ironclad. Hartford continued. Your father has consulted me about contesting it, but I've strongly advised against that course of action. Any challenge would be frivolous and expensive, and given the events of Christmas, which were witnessed by 35 people, including several attorneys, It would likely damage his reputation further. Is he going to drop it? I asked. I believe so, particularly because Mr. Pacheco has made it clear that he has additional documentation he'd be willing to present in court if necessary. I wondered what else Pacheco had in that briefcase. There's one more thing, Hartford said, about the assault. You would be well within your rights to press charges. I witnessed it. So did 34 other people. I'd thought about it. I'd photographed the bruises, which had turned a spectacular purple-black. But the idea of dragging my family through criminal court made me feel sick. I'm not going to press charges, I said, but I want you to tell my father something for me. Of course. Tell him that if he tries anything else, if he contests the will, if he pressures me again, if he sends anyone else to convince me to sign away my rights, I will press charges. And I will make sure every business partner, every country club member, and every society contact he has knows exactly what he did. There was a pause. Then Hartford said quietly, I'll deliver the message. On New Year's Eve, my mother called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Lou. Her voice was small. Could you come to the house just for an hour? Your father wants to talk. Is he going to apologize or is he going to pressure me again? I think he's ready to listen. I drove to Boston the next morning. This time, I brought Irma with me for moral support. She waited in the car while I went inside. The house felt different without the party lights and champagne glasses. Just a family home, quiet and cold. My father sat in his study looking older than I'd ever seen him. My mother hovered nervously by the door. Kevin wasn't there. Lou. Dad's voice was hoarse. I owe you an apology. Yes, you do. He flinched at my directness. I was wrong to grab you, wrong to pressure you, wrong to... He trailed off, struggling. I spent so long believing that family legacy meant passing things to sons that I never stopped to ask if that belief was right. And now I asked, I don't want to lose you. He looked up, and I saw genuine regret in his eyes. 3 business partners have pulled their contracts. The country club asked me to step down from the board. People I've known for 20 years aren't returning my calls. I thought I was protecting our legacy, but all I did was destroy it. You destroyed it by valuing tradition over people, I said, by valuing control over love. I know. He stood, but didn't approach me. I'm asking, can you forgive me? I thought about that for a long moment, about the years of being dismissed and overlooked, about the bruises on my arm that were only now fading to yellow-green, about watching him perform for guests while treating his own daughter like a possession. I'm keeping the house, I said. I'm keeping everything Grandpa left me. That's not negotiable. I understand. And I need space, real space, no phone calls demanding I come home, no guilt trips about family obligations. If we're going to rebuild any kind of relationship, it has to be on my terms. My father nodded slowly. What are your terms? I'll think about it, I said. And when I'm ready, I'll let you know. Until then, respect my boundaries. I turned to leave, then paused. I wanted your approval my whole life, Dad, but I don't need it anymore. I know my worth. I finally see what Grandpa saw, and that's enough. Irma and I drove back to Manhattan in comfortable silence. She knew me well enough not to push. Somewhere around the Connecticut border, I finally spoke. I spent 32 years trying to earn their love, I said, trying to be perfect enough, accomplished enough, quiet enough. I thought if I just worked harder and achieved more, maybe they'd finally see me. And now? Irma asked. Now I know it was never about me. They couldn't see me because they never looked. They were too busy protecting their idea of how things should be. The city's skyline came into view. My city, the place where I'd built a life they knew nothing about. In Manhattan, I wasn't just the daughter. I was Lou Pemberton, senior associate, future junior partner, and attorney who'd saved dozens of families from losing their legacies. Are you going to forgive them? Irma asked. Maybe someday, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean going back to how things were. They broke something that night, and even if it heals, there will always be a scar. We pulled up in front of my apartment building. Irma turned to me. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. You could have caved under all that pressure. Most people would have. I almost did. I thought about my father's grip on my arm, the 35 faces watching me, and the crushing weight of their expectations. But then I remembered Grandpa's voice. They don't see you, but I do. And I realized I see myself too. Finally. Irma hugged me. That's all that matters. I went upstairs to my apartment, looked around at the life I'd built in secret, and made a decision. I was done hiding, done shrinking, done pretending to be less than I was to make other people comfortable. Starting tomorrow, the world would know exactly who Lou Pemberton was. The news broke on January 2nd, 2025. Irma texted me at 8 a.m. Check the Boston Globe business section. I pulled up the website on my laptop, and there it was. Pemberton Properties CEO faces backlash after family incident. The article was careful with its language. No explicit accusations, but the implication was clear. Multiple sources had confirmed that Nick Pemberton Sr. had attempted to coerce his daughter into relinquishing a legal inheritance at a Christmas gathering attended by prominent Boston business and society figures. The fallout was swift. By noon, 3 major clients had terminated their contracts with Pemberton Properties. The article quoted an anonymous source. Nick Pemberton Sr. attempted to coerce his daughter into surrendering her legal inheritance through physical intimidation in front of witnesses. This behavior is unacceptable for someone in his position. The Boston Country Club issued a statement requesting my father's resignation from the membership committee. The Boston Elite Society quietly removed my mother from her charity board position. My phone rang. It was my mother crying. Lou, it's a nightmare. Everyone is canceling on us. Your father's lost over $8 million in contracts. 2 board members resigned from Pemberton Properties. People are saying terrible things. Mom, I said gently but firmly, those aren't terrible things. They're true things. But we're being destroyed. No, you're experiencing consequences for your actions. There's a difference. She was quiet for a moment, then spoke in a smaller voice. I should have protected you that night. I should have stood up to your father. Yes, I said, you should have. I'm so sorry, honey. I was wrong. We were all wrong. I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the beginning of understanding. I appreciate you saying that, Mom, but I need you to show me, not just tell me. Real change, not just words. How? Start by respecting my decisions, starting with the house. It's mine. Grandpa wanted me to have it. Can you accept that? A long pause then. Yes, I can accept that. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. On January 5th, I received an email from Kevin. Subject: I'm sorry, Salwa. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to even read this whole email, but I need to say it anyway. I was selfish, desperate, and completely wrong. I tried to manipulate you into giving up your inheritance to cover debts you didn't even know I had. I let Dad bully you because it was easier than admitting I'd screwed up my own life. I called your career paperwork because it made me feel better about my own failures. You were right about everything. I checked myself into Lakeside Recovery on December 28th. It's a residential program for gambling addiction. I'm on day 8 of a 30-day stay. It's hard, really hard. But I'm finally facing what I've been running from. Dad cut me off financially, which I deserve. I'm living on the trust fund Grandpa left me now. And you know what? He was right to structure it that way. If he'd given me direct access to $1 million, I would have lost it all in 6 months. I'm sorry for every time I diminished you. Every time I acted like your success didn't matter. Every time I stood by while Dad treated you like you were less than. You're my sister, and you deserved better. I'm not asking you to respond. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better, trying to become someone who deserves to be your brother. Nick. I read the email 3 times. It could be performative. It could be temporary. But something about it felt genuine. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I saved the email and went about my day. 2 weeks later, another email arrived. A photo of Kevin holding a 30-day sobriety chip from Gamblers Anonymous. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed a short reply. I'm proud of you for getting help. Let's take it one day at a time. On March 15th, 2025, Jose Pacheco called an all-staff meeting at Pacheco and Associates. I stood in the back of the conference room, trying to control my nerves. I knew what was coming. Pacheco had hinted at it last week, but I still felt like I might vibrate out of my skin. Pacheco stood at the front of the room, commanding attention without effort. Thank you all for gathering, he began. As you know, this firm was built on 3 principles: excellence, integrity, and dedication to our clients. Today, I'm pleased to announce that someone who embodies all 3 is joining our partnership. He looked directly at me. Diana Pemberton, could you come up here? The room erupted in applause. Irma was crying. Even the paralegals were clapping. I walked to the front, my legs feeling strange and disconnected. Lou has spent 8 years at this firm, Pacheco said. She's won 47 cases, generated over $3.2 million in revenue, and earned the respect of every attorney she's worked with. More importantly, she has shown unwavering integrity even when faced with tremendous personal pressure. He didn't mention Christmas directly, but several people who'd heard the story nodded knowingly. It's my honor to announce that effective immediately, Lou Pemberton is a junior partner at Pacheco and Associates. More applause. Irma rushed over to hug me. Other attorneys shook my hand and offered congratulations. Pacheco pulled me aside as the celebration continued. Your office is on the 44th floor now. Corner view. You've earned it. Thank you, I said, my voice thick, for everything, for believing in me, for showing up at Christmas when stop, Pacheco said gently. You don't thank people for basic decency. Now go celebrate. Take the afternoon off. That's an order from your partner. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in months. That evening, my mother called. I saw the announcement on the firm's website. "Lou, I'm so proud of you." And this time, I believed her. In April, I finally drove to Cape Cod. I'd been avoiding it. The house, the memories, the weight of everything that had happened. But spring was coming, and I needed to face it. 21,105 Ocean Drive looked exactly as I remembered. The Colonial's white paint was slightly faded from salt air, but the wraparound porch was still solid, and the view of the Atlantic was breathtaking. I used the key the estate attorney had given me and stepped inside. The house smelled like Grandpa. Old books, pipe tobacco, and the faint scent of the sea. Everything was exactly as he'd left it. His reading glasses on the side table, a half-finished crossword puzzle on the kitchen counter, and the rocking chair where he'd sat every morning to watch the sunrise. I walked through the room slowly, touching things. The law books in his study, the photo albums in the living room, and the collection of seashells on the windowsill that we'd gathered together over the years. In his bedroom, I found a framed photo I'd never seen before. Grandpa and I at my law school graduation. I was wearing my cap and gown, grinning. He was looking at me with such obvious pride that it made my chest ache. Underneath the photo was an envelope with my name on it. I opened it with shaking hands. My dearest Salwa, if you're reading this, it means everything went as I expected. Nick tried to take the house from you. I'm sorry you had to face that, but I knew you were strong enough to handle it. This house is yours because you earned it with love, not obligation. Do whatever you want with it. Keep it, sell it, turn it into something new. The choice is yours, and I trust you to make the right one. Remember, you were never the problem. You were never too much or not enough. You were always exactly who you were meant to be. They just couldn't see it. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm so glad I got to know the remarkable woman you became, Grandpa. I sat in his rocking chair holding the letter and cried. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen, being valued, being loved for exactly who I was. I decided then I would keep the house. I'd renovate one room into a home office, spend weekends here, and honor Grandpa's memory by living the life he'd wanted me to have. A life where I never had to shrink again. In June, my father sent me a letter. It arrived in a cream-colored envelope with a handwritten address and 3 pages of careful script. Lou, I've been in therapy for 3 months now. Doctor, Walsh is helping me understand why I reacted the way I did at Christmas and why I've spent my entire life treating you as less important than your brother. The short answer is, I was raised to believe that men carried family legacy, and I never questioned it. I never stopped to ask if that belief was right or fair or even rational. I just accepted it as truth. The longer answer is that I was threatened by your independence. You didn't need me. You built a life I knew nothing about. That terrified me. So I tried to diminish it. I was wrong about everything. I grabbed you. I hurt you. I humiliated you in front of people to force you into obedience. There's no excuse for that. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know. I see you now. I see how wrong I was and how remarkable you've always been. I'm sorry it took so long for everything to open my eyes. If you're willing, I'd like to try again slowly, on your terms. Dad. I read the letter 3 times, then called him.
Dad, I got your letter. Lou, his voice cracked. I didn't know if you'd respond. I'm not ready to forgive you completely, I said carefully, but I'm willing to try slowly if you respect my boundaries. I will, I promise. Let's start small, I said. Coffee once a month. No talk about inheritance or business. Just us getting to know each other as adults. I'd like that. He sounded like he was crying. Thank you for giving me a chance. Don't waste it, I said. Not harshly, but firmly. I won't. Thank you so much for watching my story. If you've been in a similar situation, please know you're not alone and you're not wrong for protecting yourself. If this resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps me share these stories. And check the description for resources on setting boundaries with toxic family members. Now, let me tell you what happened. 1 year later, Christmas 2025 was different. I hosted it at the Cape Cod House, my house, now renovated and welcoming. The ocean crashed against the shore outside. A fire crackled in the fireplace. The tree was smaller, simpler, and decorated with ornaments that actually meant something. My mother arrived first, carrying homemade cinnamon rolls. The house looks beautiful, honey. Thanks, Mom. Kevin came next with his wife and kids. He'd been sober for 11 months and working a regular job at a marketing firm. Nothing glamorous, but honest work he'd earned himself. Uncle Salwa, my niece squealed, running to hug me. Hey, kiddo, want to see the beach? Irma arrived with her girlfriend, and my friend from law school, Marcus, brought wine. This was my chosen family, mixed with the relatives who'd proven they could change. My father wasn't there. We'd had coffee twice a month for the past 6 months, slowly rebuilding something that resembled a relationship. But holidays were still too weighted, too complicated. Maybe next year. Over dinner, Kevin raised his glass. I want to say something, Salwa. A year ago, I was a mess. I blamed everyone else for my problems, and I tried to take something from you that you'd earned. You had every right to cut me out of your life. Instead, you gave me space to get better, and you didn't slam the door completely. Thank you. You did the work, I said. I just stopped enabling you. My mother squeezed my hand, and I'm learning to do better too, to see you for who you are, not who I thought you should be. We toasted to Grandpa Max for teaching us what real love looks like. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had a family who actually saw me. By the end of 2025, my client list had grown by 40%. I'd developed a specialization in family inheritance disputes, helping people navigate exactly the kind of toxic dynamics I'd experienced. My reputation spread. Clients sought me out specifically because I understood the emotional weight of these cases, not just the legal mechanics. In September, I was invited to speak at the National Estate Planning Conference. My topic? Protecting clients from family coercion and undue influence. Standing at that podium, looking out at 300 attorneys, I thought about the girl who used to hide her success to avoid making her family uncomfortable. Inheritance disputes are never just about money, I told the audience. They're about worth, recognition, and who gets to decide your value.
Our job is to ensure our clients' autonomy is protected, even from their own families. The presentation received a standing ovation, Pacheco found me afterward. You know what Max would say if he could see you now? What? That's my girl, Pacheco smiled. You've become exactly what he knew you'd be, not despite your family's treatment, but because you finally stopped letting them define you. I looked around the conference hall, my peers, my colleagues, my chosen professional family. I'd built this, all of it, and no one could take it from me. On a quiet Sunday in late December, I stood on the deck of the Cape Cod house, watching the sunset over the Atlantic. The sky was painted orange and pink, the waves rolling in steady and sure. I held a framed photo of Grandpa, the one from my law school graduation, and felt his presence in the salt air. Thank you, I whispered to the ocean, to the sky, to his memory. They say blood is thicker than water, but the full quote is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family you choose, the people who see you, support you, and fight for you, they're the ones who matter. I didn't lose my family that Christmas. I lost the illusion that their approval defined me, and in losing that, I found something infinitely more valuable. Myself. I turned, walked back inside the house, and closed the door gently behind me. I was finally home.